In this video, I'll demonstrate the data types that we discussed in the previous lecture and show them actually being used in ArcGIS. Today's focus will be on the raster data type, but there'll also be a review of the vector data type. These data, as usual, are available under the Lessons folder in Angel and under the Datasets folder. And we'll discover three new data sets here, one called Salmon Creek Watershed Boundary, one called Roads Clipped, and one called Land Use. The first two are both vector data sets, and you will download them and use them in the same way that you used the countries data set in the previous lesson. The land use data set is a raster data set, and it is very slightly different, so I will use this as both a review and highlight the slight difference in how it's used. So the land use data set contains land use for an area called the Salmon Creek Watershed, and it is a raster data format. So first step in downloading it, and this step is very similar to the process that you would use to download data sets from most repositories of spatial data. So I click on land use, I click again on land use, and it'll offer me the familiar window where I can either open or save the file. In this case I'll open it, but I will need to, and good, as I suspected, the data that that makes up this land use data set is inside a folder called land use inside the archive. What I want to warn you about is inside of the land use folder is some mysterious data sets that look like this, and I need to warn you that all of these data sets need to be maintained and in their current order and arrangement and everything else to make up one complete raster data set. So this whole set of files, including these folders and the subfiles, the files inside these folders, all need to be in their current arrangement. So the easiest way to deal with this, and what I've set up for you, is to put all of this miscellaneous stuff inside of a single folder, which can now be copied and pasted into a convenient location, such as my desktop. This is not using the desktop on a campus machine is not a good idea, because desktop gets cleared and reset as soon as the computer is turned off. So you will want to use your flash drive or your File City for something like that. Now to load the raster data set, we again use the Add Data button and ask to add data, and now it's up to us to locate the folder, the data that I just downloaded, which I placed on my desktop. You may need to use the Connect to Folder button right here, which allows you to tell the computer to search or to address a particular folder. My computer saves that information between sessions. So I'll go look at the desktop and find the folder called Land Use, and I will see this grid-looking icon here, which is an indication that this is a raster data set, and it's called LU Clipped. That's an old name for it that I didn't changed, and I just do add. It is likely to ask me if I'd like to build pyramids at this time, which is a way that it didn't. I must have already created pyramids, which is a way that that raster data sets create an index for themselves to allow for more rapid processing. Let's just look at this data set momentarily, and what I want to point out is something very new and very important, and that is the ability to right-hand click on the name of any data set in the table of contents and that right-hand click on the mouse allows me to access a whole variety of important operations that apply to that particular data set. The one I would like to use first is opening something called the attribute table, which is the information that's attached to each of the cells in this raster data set. And as you might recall in the lecture that you saw previously, this raster set, well, this one is slightly more complete. Oh, this one is very generous. It actually does include a column that provides the translations of the particular land use codes. So this one provides us with extra information that is not typically available in a raster data set. Most raster data sets are limited to the value that's assigned to the raster and the number of cells that are present of each type. In this case, I'd like to just give a quick example and leave you to do the exhaustive work on determining the land uses. Let's look for the largest land use within this particular watershed, and I can do that by looking for the largest of the cell counts, and I discover that the code number 81, which is designated as hay or pasture, you can look this up in the appendix of your lab exercise as well, has 48,000 plus cells of hay and pasture, and by clicking on this in the attribute table, those hay and pasture cells are highlighted in my map as and I can change to a different color and view the cultivated crops, or I can unclick them all if I wanted to, but I want to demonstrate the hay and pasture in this case, which seems to be the dominant land use. It has 48,000 cells. The way that you can get that as a percentage, there's a convenient trick. You could get your calculator out and add up the total number of cells, but there's a convenient trick, and that is to right-click on the and deselect all of the cells. The trick is to right-click on the count and ask for statistics, and it will tell me that the total number of cells in the watershed is 165,184. And now I can just divide 48,000 by 165,000 to get the percentage of hay and pasture in this particular watershed. That's the primary lesson. I want to show just two other simple tasks that are useful while I have your attention and have this window open. I'd also like to show, my memory is failing me slightly here. There they are. I'd like to show you also how to load and symbolize two other data sets, which you'll be able to download from Angel, which I didn't bother to. I've already downloaded, I'm not bothering to show you. Those are roads, and we also have the Salmon Creek watershed boundary. Now what's noticeable here is, by the way, I can leave the attribute table if your left-hand side of the screen is set up in such a way that that you have either the attribute table or the table of contents. Down at the bottom, you can click on the button that takes us back to the table of contents. What I've done so far is inconvenient, and what that is I now have the Salmon Creek watershed boundary showing up as a filled polygon. If I just click on the purple patch right here and ask for it to be shown as hollow, and I believe I would like to show it as a blue outline with double thickness, width and color, width of 2, color of blue, I can get a nice outline on top of my on my map that shows a boundary as well as the land use. The roads aren't showing up well. I can also click on this patch and tell the roads to be change to a black line with single thickness. Say OK, the roads are now slightly more prominent. And now I do have what I'd like to say is the final product for today's exercise. It is possible to click left-hand click and drag layers from the top to bottom and reorganize the way in which the layers are stacked. Right now I have my land use on top of my watershed boundary and on top of my roads, so both of those are invisible. I can move roads back up on top, now they're visible, and the watershed boundary back on top to make it visible as well. That's the end of the lesson for this week.